Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into the super interesting, kind of scary and often misunderstood world of China's military. You've probably heard a lot about China's military goals, like how they're building tons of aircraft carriers, how their military budget is huge, and how they want to be a global superpower. And guess what? A lot of that is true. China's military has gotten much stronger recently. But here's the thing. Building a strong military takes more than just fancy weapons and lots of money. It's like baking a cake. You can have the best ingredients, but if you don't know how to bake, you'll end up with a yucky mess. Today we're going to look past the news headlines and understand China's military power. We'll look at the problems they have, their weaknesses, and why their military strength is more complicated than it seems. Let's talk about experience. In war, it's important to have actual fighting experience. And this is where things get interesting for China. China's army, called the PLA, hasn't been in a lot of wars recently. Their last big war was in 1979 against Vietnam. War has changed a lot since then. We now have drones, cyber warfare, and super-fast missiles, things that would blow the minds of generals from 1979. Simulations and training are good, but nothing beats real experience. You wouldn't want a heart surgeon who's only practiced on grapes, right? You would want someone who's worked on a real heart. And war is as real as it gets. This lack of experience doesn't mean the PLA is clueless. They've been studying modern wars, learning tactics and seeing what works and what doesn't. But will this book knowledge help them in a real war? We don't know yet. In war, there's a big difference between reading the rules and actually playing the game, and the PLA, despite all its new weapons, is still pretty new to the game of global warfare. Okay, let's talk logistics. Moving an army is like throwing a surprise party, but with tanks, soldiers, and lots of weapons. And nothing ruins a party like not having enough tanks. China, with its huge size and big ambitions, has a big logistics problem. They can move troops inside China easily, but sending them overseas is much harder. You need to get your troops to the fight, feed them, give them weapons, and keep them supplied while they're dodging bullets. It's like planning a picnic for 1 million people, but the ants have rocket launchers. This is where China's problems show. They don't have the experience or the resources to support big operations far from home. They rely on supply lines that can be easily attacked, and they don't have many bases overseas. If China's military was a teenager, their logistics would be that friend who always forgets their wallet. Not good when you're trying to be a superpower. China knows this is a problem and they're working on it, but building good logistics takes time, skill, and lots of money. You can't rush it no matter how many tanks you have. So while China's military looks strong on paper, their ability to actually fight a war far from home is still uncertain. Now let's talk about teamwork. In modern war, it's not enough to have a big army, a big navy, and a big air force. They all need to work together. And this is a problem for the PLA. In the past, China's military branches didn't work together very well. Each branch had its own money, its own plans, and its own power struggles. It was like a messy tug of war. China knows this is a problem, and they're trying to fix it. They're doing more training exercises together and making the command structure simpler. But changing old habits is hard. It's like trying to herd cats. It requires a change in thinking, sharing resources and power, and trusting each other, which hasn't always happened. Until the PLA can work together better, they won't be able to do complicated operations very well. It's like baking a cake again. You can have the right ingredients, but if you don't mix them properly, you get a lumpy mess. And nobody wants a lumpy military operation. Modern warfare is like a giant science fair. And while China has been busy building its military, they're still behind in some important tech areas. Even with advancements, China still lags behind the US in things like jet engines and computer chips, the things that make stealth bombers fast and missiles hard to stop. China knows it needs better technology. They're spending lots of money on research, and they've been known to copy designs from other countries. But creating new military technology is hard. It takes time and lots of tries. It's like trying to build a smartphone from a pile of rocks. You might get there eventually, but it's going to take a while. And technology keeps changing. It's a race, and just as China catches up in one area, it falls behind in another. It's like running up a down escalator. So, while China has made progress, they're still catching up. And in military tech, catching up can be dangerous. Being a superpower is like being the popular kid in school. Everyone wants to be your friend, but they also want something from you. And China, with its growing power, has a lot of new friends. The problem is, many of these friends have problems with China, like arguments over land or old rivalries. We're talking about the South China Sea, Taiwan, the Himalayas, lots of dangerous places. Each of these problems requires soldiers, resources and attention, making China's military spread thin. It's like playing whack-a-mole, but the moles have nuclear weapons. You can hit a few, but more keep popping up. This tension is a problem for China. They want to be a global power, but they're constantly dealing with problems closer to home. It's like being pulled in two directions, and it's going to be a bigger problem for China in the future. The stronger China gets, the more other countries will push back. Okay, let's talk about copying. China's military has gotten stronger by copying other countries' technology. They're good at taking things apart and building their own versions, but copying isn't good for long-term success. Real innovation, the kind that makes other countries copy you, requires creativity, risk-taking and accepting failure. And those aren't things that are encouraged in China's system. It's like trying to teach a fish to climb a tree. China's current system, where everyone has to follow the rules, doesn't help with new ideas. China knows this is a problem. They're spending money on research, but creating real innovation is hard. It's unpredictable and risky. But if China wants to stop relying on other countries' technology, it's a risk they have to take. Let's talk about China's relationship with Russia. China still buys a lot of its weapons from Russia, like fighter jets and missiles. It's a good deal for Russia. They sell lots of weapons to China. But relying on another country for weapons is risky. It creates a weakness that other countries can use against you. Imagine China and Russia have a fight. Suddenly China can't get parts for its Russian jets, and the customer service line is disconnected. China knows this is a risk. They're trying to build more of their own weapons. But stopping buying weapons from Russia is hard. It's like breaking up with someone you live and work with. It's messy. But if China wants to be a truly independent military power, it's something they have to do. Remember the saying, a house divided against itself cannot stand? Well, China's military might have some problems. It looks strong on the outside, but there are problems on the inside. We're talking about corruption, infighting, and tension between the military and the government. Imagine a car with a powerful engine but faulty brakes, and a driver who's always on their phone. Not safe, right? Corruption is a big problem in the PLA. People taking bribes, stealing money, and selling secrets weakens the military. Then there's infighting. Different parts of the military compete for power and resources. And there's the relationship between the army and the government. The government controls the army, but the army wants more power. It's a complicated relationship, so while China's military looks strong from the outside, it has internal problems that make it weaker. Thanks for watching. We hope you understand the challenges China's military faces better now. It's easy to think China's military is unstoppable, but as we've seen, it's more complicated than that. Building a strong military takes more than just money and people. It takes experience, good logistics, technology, and good relationships with other countries. And China has problems in all these areas. This doesn't mean China's military is weak. They've made a lot of progress, but it's important to look deeper and understand their weaknesses. Only then can we truly understand China's place in the world.